Welcome to Newswire, news for Nebraska's farmers and ranchers. The ongoing drought continues to be a major concern for Nebraska farmers and ranchers. There are a number of assistance programs available to producers who are impacted by drought. Nebraska Farm Bureau sat down with the Farm Service Agency in Nebraska to answer questions about three key programs: Livestock Forage Disaster Program, or LFP, Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish Program, or ELAP, and CRP Emergency Haying or Grazing.
All three of those programs, LFP, ELAP, and CRP Emergency Haying and Grazing, use the U.S. Drought Monitor as their main triggering mechanism. So for LFP and ELAP, a county will trigger for those programs when they reach the D2 level on the U.S. Drought Monitor for 8 consecutive weeks and during the grazing season. So our grazing season in Nebraska runs from May 1 to October 15th. So they have to hit D2 for 8 consecutive weeks, and then they'll trigger for either LFP or ELAP, both. It's a little different for CRP Emergency Haying and Grazing. That also uses the U.S. Drought Monitor as a main triggering tool, but that triggers when you hit D2 for 1 week.
LFP and ELAP will also trigger when a county reaches D3 level drought. LFP is designed to aid producers who have lost grazing due to drought.
A producer has to have both risk in livestock and risk in grazing lands in order to take advantage of those financial resources that are available for that program. So that's one of the key things. And if you happen to be leasing ground, grazing ground, you have to be able to show that you had risk in that grazing ground through your lease during the time that the drought triggered in your county and during the normal grazing season. So that's a key thing for LFP. Yes, you have a long window to apply. You can go all the way to January of 2023, but you also can come in now, right? So if you're being impacted now and your county has triggered for the program, you can come in and those benefits will come once your application is all the way complete through our office. It's not like we have to wait until the end of that time period to release those funds.
With LFP, you must have a current acreage report on file with FSA. And while the deadline has passed, you are still able to file an acreage report and simply pay a late fee as part of your LFP application process. ELAP is a program that can help producers with the cost of hauling water, hauling feed, or hauling livestock that have been impacted by drought.
For ELAP, it's more about record keeping, right? So there's those three parts. It's hauling water. So maybe your stock pond has dried up and you're going to have to start hauling supplemental water, which is something that you normally wouldn't do. You're going to need to make sure you're keeping good records of the miles traveled, number of trips made, those types of things, so that you can get some reimbursement for the hauling that you've done. Same thing for hauling supplemental feed. If that's something that you normally would not do during this time period due to drought, record keeping becomes important for the number of miles traveled and number of trips and those types of things for that supplemental reimbursement through that program. And then the third component of ELAP is moving your animals to a totally different grazing location. Because your current grazing location isn't sufficient to support those animals. And again, it's about keeping track of the miles traveled to haul those animals to a new location. The ELAP program will exclude the first 25 miles and won't go above 1,000 miles. So there is that restriction within that program as well.
The window to apply for LFP and ELAP runs until January 2023. However, with ELAP, you must contact your FSA office within 30 days of when you determine your loss and need for the program. Producers must also contact their county FSA office before taking advantage of the CRP Emergency Haying and Grazing.
There's a couple important things with CRP Emergency Haying and Grazing that producers need to keep in mind. One, they do not have a 25% reduction in their rental rate. They do not when it's emergency CRP haying and grazing. So that's important for producers to be aware of. They also need to make sure, though, before they take any action on their CRP ground, that they contact their county FSA office and get approval in writing. That's because they need to work with NRCS and get an update to their conservation plan before they start taking any action. They can hay or graze the full contract acreage that they're applying for, any practice, but there are limitations of 90 days for grazing, and that can be either consecutive 90 days or it can be split apart, but not more than 90 days. And then for haying, the only restriction there is whether the stand can support like 100% haying. So if you were going to hay the whole contract acreage, you would have to talk to NRCS ahead of time, make sure that that stand is in good enough condition to be able to do a full haying.
With the unusual longevity of this drought, it's a good idea to check in with your county FSA office to see if you qualify for any assistance programs.
Really, the best thing you can do is pick up the phone, call your county office, and say, hey, you know, I think I want to access this program. Tell me what I need to do to make sure I have all the right paperwork, all the right records, so that I can come in and apply and make an appointment with them to come in and figure out the rest of the details so that we can, you know, get you all the way through the process with all of the right information in place and get you some benefits during, you know, what's a really challenging time for a lot of producers.
To find a list of available drought resources, visit nefb.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter for more drought-related information throughout the year. Thanks for watching Newswire.